Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Austin.
Morning.
Morning.
Now, has Stephanie arrived yet in?
I just saw her pop her head in. I think she's coming back in just a second.
Okay. I'll give it a minute before we begin. I hate doing that when Jeff's on the call because he likes to start everything on time.
I thought you would learn by now, John.
I'm a slow learner.
Everybody knows what time the meeting starts.
Right.
In my house, when I was a kid, they would start dinner. Dinner was at 5, and if you came in late, my dad would say, "You know what time dinner started."
And then you go hungry.
Yeah.
We talking about me.
Yeah.
Well, good morning to you too.
John, Stephanie's here now.
I wanted to. I want to make sure we're supposed to acknowledge committee members. Jeff, are we supposed to acknowledge all board members that are also on the call in the beginning?
I mean, you can take a roll call if you want. That's what we do at the board meeting.
Okay.
Yes, please, Mr. K. So for our meeting minutes, that helps us. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to begin the meeting. It's 8:31 a.m. I'd like to call the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee to order. I'd like to begin with a roll call of committee members. John Tagg.
Ann O'Gorick.
Stephanie Turman.
Okay, I'd like to do next a roll call of all board members.
Jeff
John
Huntley.
Tagg.
Austin Davis.
Gary DeLon.
Are there any other board members? Okay. Well, thank you very much and welcome to the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee. First item on the agenda is the approval of the May 20th minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing no corrections, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the minutes have been approved. Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is the downtown mobility plan. I think Chris Watts from the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership and Andy Silverman from the Port Authority are going to present or give us an update on that, an overview. So, Amy, are we starting or is how do you want to begin?
I'm going to put it right over to Chris Watts. So take it away, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, John. Hello, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of you all. It's been I think a few years since we initially had this discussion about our collective interest in pursuing a downtown mobility plan, and it's been a incredible collaboration between us and the Port Authority and the city and SPC to move this process forward. And before I get into it, I just want to thank Amy Silverman personally, and as well as David Huffaker, who have been great champions of this process and pushed us to make a plan that fully takes into consideration all the needs of downtown today, but also the concurrent planning efforts that they're been leading on their end. So just thanks to David and Amy for their collaboration and partnership. Next slide, we'll get into the depth of the plan. So to set some context before we get into where we are, the reason why the PDP, in collaboration with the Port Authority, the city, and SPC, decided to move forward with the downtown mobility plan is because we recognize downtown is changing, and this was even before the impacts of the pandemic were happening and even understood. Over the past decade, there's been over $8 billion of investments in downtown, not just the Golden Triangle, but the surrounding neighborhoods. That has transformed the relationship between the people, businesses, and infrastructure. And we know that there's going to be some decisions made on how we utilize public realm, how we move people to accommodate these changes into the future. It's been a vibrant, dynamic place for its 250-year history, but certainly the impacts of the last year have been challenging, and there's significant uncertainty about the future of downtown. And so to prepare us for that future, we wanted to create a plan that provides a proactive approach to strengthen downtown, that we can continue to attract people, spur the type of sustainable and equitable development we want to see, and focus resources to get things done. So that's kind of the context on why we decided to do this plan. Next slide is a little bit more about the process. We kicked this this planning effort off in fall of 2019. The ideas for this plan really started in decades before, but really as a result of Envision Downtown efforts that were happening during 2015 to 2018. And the outcome of Envision Downtown was the need to create a plan to create some strategy and priority setting for what we want to see for downtown as it relates to transit and infrastructure and public realm. The process went through various phases. As we all know, got midway through the first phase. We had a pretty significant impact due to COVID that resulted in some changes in approach, but it did not change the process. And I think it really strengthened our ability to bring more people together through new digital tools that we were able to deploy. The process was primarily informed and intended to provide us with feedback from the community. You know, downtown is not just the people who live here and commute here. It's really the regions, and understanding that perspective was really important for us to understanding trade-offs and decision making that we're going to need to happen to make a plan that could be implemented. 90 plus organizations were represented on the Downtown Advisory Group that informed this planning process throughout the various phases, as well as an equity working group that helped and make sure that we are checking ourselves against our biases and making sure that this plan is positioned well for the future we all want to see, as well as now well over 2,000 respondents to multiple online and in-person surveys from throughout the region. We were intentional in ensuring that the outreach for those surveys was representative of the neighborhoods of the city, but also the various municipalities throughout the county. We just wrapped up the final phase the last phase of the process this past May, and we rolled out the plan to the public, which I'll share here shortly. The contents of that plan on May 11th as a part of the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership State of Downtown. And over the past month have been receiving feedback both from online surveys and our web platform that was released, but also through stakeholder meetings and discussions with folks like yourselves. Next slide, please. The plan was grounded in a set of guiding principles and goals that we felt was the most important component of this plan to help us really identify the North Star where we're headed towards, but also provide a framework to establish goals and accountability towards decisions that we, the collective we, not just the PDP, of course, but the Port Authority, the city, and anyone who's really influencing infrastructure, public realm, transportation, and downtown want to live towards. The 5 guiding principles each have a set of specific goals that have been vetted through the Downtown Advisory Group and the public process, feedback process that are included in the final plan that we rolled out last month. I know you all can read, but I will just quickly recap these guiding principles because I think it's important to reaffirm what was found during this process. We heard that people want downtown, and we're really talking about mobility, as you all know, about transportation and public realm. It's how you get around, but also, even more importantly, how you experience a place. And people want that place to be welcoming and vibrant, but also while embracing the racial, cultural, economic diversity of the region. Another one, which is particularly important to, I think, the Port Authority, is that it was very clear that people wanted downtown to be people first, that we make decisions to understand how to accommodate all types of people and abilities that are coming to downtown, but also transit prioritized. We all know that transit moves the most people to and through the Golden Triangle every day, post or pre-pandemic, and we anticipate and excited to come back to that post-pandemic. But as we also know, our streets don't always accommodate transit most effectively, and certainly don't accommodate transit riders to the level that I think we all feel they deserve. So people first and transit prioritized is the second important guiding principle. The third is equitable and affordable, making sure that decisions on how we activate spaces and accommodate all are certainly involved at the forefront of our process as a core guiding principle. The fourth is intuitive and responsive. We have the unique street grid that we all know and love and hate sometimes of the Golden Triangle that may not provide the easiest navigation for pedestrians, motorists, transit riders, anyone, visitors, guests, folks have been here for their entire lives. And so we want to make sure that, again, decisions that are made are thought through and result in a more intuitive and responsive network. We also know flexibility is a key word we heard through the process, and it's sometimes our infrastructure may not provide for that, but with changing needs in downtown and things that like the pandemic that resulted in some quick change, we know being a little more flexible with our decisions, or at least the availability for flexible decision making is important. And the last is sustainable and healthy, advancing the infrastructure and policy investment or infrastructure investment policy that provides a more sustainable downtown that's focused on improving public health and supporting those dynamic needs of the future place. Next slide, please. After getting, setting those high level guiding principles and goals, we got technical and looked at every street within the Golden Triangle and understood, current infrastructure, future, or and as it states now, from a transit network, from a vehicular network, freight network, where pedestrian and public space corridors are. Also looked at current and future travel demand, understanding where people are going today, and looking at potential future development that is both proposed, but also what the potential may be in soft sites throughout downtown and the greater downtown to understand what the capacity may be for future travel demand, and looked at with those kind of inputs of the future and current travel demand and the infrastructure, determined a typology for each street, understanding what, based on the volume of people that are being moved on that street, but also the type of activity that is occurring, both in terms of the ground floor usage, but where's residential or an employee density occurring. Assigned a typology for each street within the network to help us make decisions on what should be occurring on that street. And so you can see from the color-coded grid here that there's 4 typologies, and it really goes from highest volume to lowest volume, from gateway streets to district streets to activity streets, which are almost a place in amongst themselves, and then neighborhood streets, which serve a lot of the new residents' capabilities and a lot of back of the office house facilities, but also should be a comfortable walking and biking experience as well. Next slide. As a result of this process, from the various surveys we heard and the feedback from the Downtown Advisory Group and stakeholders and a lot of research of previous plans and priorities and current planning processes, 9 high impact priorities were identified. And these high impact priorities are key project themes that each incorporate various potential phases and projects that the plan is pushing to be implemented. I'm not going to read through each project high impact priority right now, but you can probably imagine the various elements incorporated with them. Some as streets work that work for 24/7 is about improving traffic flow at peak periods of times, but also having curbside flexibility to accommodate various loading and unloading needs throughout the district and a little bit more efficiently. Others, such as reconnecting downtown, is more about place and strengthening the relationship between the CBD and the surrounding communities, particularly as new development is occurring, in the Lower Hill and the Hill District and the Strip District, even the North Shore, South Shore, and Uptown. There's significant investments and changes, and we want to be thoughtful and intentional on how we create place between those 2 neighborhoods. The ones that I will, or the one I will want to talk a little bit more about today that Amy wanted to get into with this committee is about better bus experience. We go to the next slide. Two of these 9 high impact priorities were focused on directly focused on public transit. One was more focused on frequency and availability, which directly ties into next transit planning, and we're very supportive and excited about where that process is going. But one better bus experience is really about the infrastructure and the routing that happens in downtown. We know and have heard, for decades that what's happening on the streets now is insufficient to meet the demands of public transit, and that this plan prioritizes and pushes for a better bus experience in downtown. That includes things like improved shelter experience, both with weatherproof elements and seating, and things that just make that a more comfortable place, as well as a better bus priority network and infrastructure to help the buses more efficiently navigate through downtown, and get where they need to go quickly, because we know and we don't get into the details of how downtown is challenging for the buses, and how making that more efficient just helps everyone, particularly the bottom line for the Port Authority as well. The last kind of component of this is ensuring that the people know when and where buses are going, and so improving that availability of both real-time transit information, but also just legibility of the system in the CBD. Next slide. So when I think I came to you a couple years ago, the agreement that the PDP has in place with the Port Authority, the expectations were to go through this process in close collaboration, and come back once that process is complete to share a brief recap and talk about next steps. And that's where we are today. Where we are with the plan is that we launched on May 11th the website downtownmobilityplan.org. That includes details about the plan, the full plan itself, the 125 pages of content, but also very simple, we think, easy to understand snapshots of each high impact priority, as well as a survey that allows for public engagement on the key elements of each high impact priority. That was launched last month and has already received over 400 responses, which is great. And we're continuing to push that out, both with some significant earned media, which was very beneficial, but also with some paid digital ads to certain key areas where we're not getting as strong responses. We also, and that is also a part of getting the public and stakeholder feedback that we've been going throughout the process. We've been trying to do our best to meet with various community groups and organizations and downtown employers and anyone that's interested to share some framing of the plan, to get some feedback, because the whole point of this plan is to improve downtown. And so coming out of this process, we already, of course, had a lot of projects in the pipeline that we've been thinking about. Now I think this plan has helped push and accelerate some of those into the forefront. And we are right now begin thinking through prioritization, phasing, budgeting, particularly as we come out of the pandemic downtown, and knowing that likely things that were before may not be into the future. In addition, we're exploring with our partners, certainly at SPC, which have been very helpful through the process, but with the Port Authority and the city, of which projects are well positioned and ready to pursue grant and funding opportunities. Because although the PDP has led this process in close collaboration, we all know that we don't own the right of way or the transit infrastructure, and we can do our best to push things forward, but it's really going to be in collaboration with our public partners to do a lot of the implementation. The most immediate and I would argue important kind of priority coming out of this planning process is aligned with what we know is the biggest project to come into downtown for decades, which is BRT. And we know BRT is going to reverse some traffic and impact just the experience of being downtown and significantly improve it for transit riders and those connecting along those routes. And we know that that also is going to disrupt the network as a whole. And so understanding how BRT is going to impact the network and what should we do to route the buses effectively, incorporating the BRT and complementing it, but also what infrastructure will be necessary to accommodate other changes to the network to support a better downtown experience as a result of BRT. And that's where we are today to introduce to this committee the intention for PDP, DOMI, and the Port Authority to collaborate on a downtown Pittsburgh bus routing and stop location plan, where I think Amy's going to share a little more detail on that process and where we are.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And thanks for the summary. Oh, I'm just getting a little feedback. Okay, I think it's you, Chris. I'm going to meet you. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Silverman, the Director of Planning and Service Development with Port Authority. Thank you, Chris, for that great summary of the Downtown Mobility Plan. So I just wanted to provide a bit more context about where we think we're going next. So Chris mentioned the Downtown-Uptown-Oakland East End Bus Rapid Transit Project is, imminently in our future. It will actually impact 46 bus routes in downtown on only 3 streets that it operates on. So with the reversal of that loop, in addition, of course, to all of the things that Chris talked about already this morning with just a changing downtown and wanting to be more responsive to our riders, we also have a lot of shifting that's happening just with that one group of routes with that project. And so that is sort of the key timing reason that we want to start moving forward with a process to look at the overall bus routing and stops for those routes and route groups in the Central Business District over the next year or two. So moving to the next slide, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we think this scope is going to include. We haven't finalized it yet, so we haven't started anything, but we're just more in the talking phase right now. And then hoping to kind of get it going over the next couple of months here. But this will, similar to the Downtown Mobility Plan, be, but even more so, be a co-led sort of 3-headed project by Port Authority's Planning and Service Development Department, the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, and the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. Components that we are anticipating be part of this scope. And just as for those of you who've been around for some time, this has been studied and looked at many times over the decades. So it is a constant sort of juggling of the 84 bus routes that come into a very small and confined downtown central business district. So it's always something that we're looking at. It has been studied before, and therefore one of the major components of this plan is to not reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that we refresh those existing conditions that came out of the mobility plan. And other changes that have come, just about from the pandemic over the last year or so, and how people respond to the post-pandemic world and how those sort of ridership and other changes may transpire. And then also do a review of some of those plans that have happened over the last 2 decades or so. So Port Authority specifically has looked at this a few times since 2000 or so, once with the Downtown-Uptown Oakland East End BRT project, and then once prior to that with a transit development plan, and then many times much previous to that as well. So we'll do that just to make sure that we aren't recreating anything that's already been created before, but take a fresh look at it with existing conditions. We're also planning to have robust public and stakeholder engagement, similar to the mobility plan and our long range plan, and sort of building off of those with stakeholder groups that have already been created through those, but continuing to expand and build. We know that in particular, it is difficult at times to reach bus riders who are transferring through downtown to go to other places. And that's a really key component of the users of the system that we're looking at here. So we'll be really cognizant of that to make sure that we have robust engagement. And then we'd like to come up with a few different proposals for how to adjust bus route circulation in the CBD, the Central Business District, as a result of BRT, but also in keeping with those goals and principles that came out of the PDP's mobility plan. So that would include looking at some different ways that we might group routes together, different ways we might be able to route those bus routes, and then different places where stops might be placed as a result of those proposals. And so our hope coming out of that is to have sort of a, here's how the downtown network needs to shift in response to BRT and in keeping with our goals, both in our long range plan as well as in PDP's mobility plan, and then create some maps and other things to help us sort of tell that story and then start to make plans to work towards implementation of any changes that might come out of that planning process. So that could be minimal or it could be significant. We don't know what that is yet. That'll be part of the sort of public and stakeholder engagement that comes throughout the project. We're looking at something like a year to a year and a half in terms of scope. So as I mentioned, we haven't completed scoping yet. So we're still kind of trying to figure out exactly how many months we need to do this. We do want to make sure that it happens before, if possible, before construction for the Downtown-Uptown-Oakland East End BRT project begins. That might not be entirely possible, but at least having a general sense for where we're headed as downtown construction may start to happen or may start to be completed in certain places, to know where and if any bus routes might be changing beyond just the BRT group. So with that, I'll open it up for to the board for any questions of Chris and I, and then after that, I do want to pass it over to David Huffaker just for a brief update on a project that was not anticipated in the agenda. But John, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris and Amy. Are there any questions of committee members?
I don't have any questions, but just a comment that I participated on the downtown advisory group for this study. And I just want to compliment the team. It was very thoughtful and well done. So I appreciate that. And I look forward to implementing some of those projects.
Yesterday, the city released the pedestrian safety plan. So I was interested if you could address any of that, Chris or Amy.
Yes, we have done our best to incorporate the collection of plans that exist into this plan. I know the city has, their Forging PGH effort that they've been leading that will chart the next, comprehensive plan for the city. There's pedestrian action plan. There's the Bike Plus plan. There is the Mobility 2070 vision plan. All are either were in process during this planning effort or were very much on the way and close to being finished. And the guiding principles and goals that are reflected in the mobility plan are intended to be directly aligned with both the planning efforts, but pedestrian action plan specifically, as well as the what we knew at the time of the long range plan from the Port Authority. And we also, they intend to be complementary and reflect each other. And as I mentioned earlier, decisions ultimately are going to be, that happen downtown are ultimately going to be, a lot of them are a result of the city's determination because they own the infrastructure and right away. And so I think whatever the downtown mobility plan informs is going to have to go through the city's framework of evaluating projects to have they meet their criteria of the pedestrian action plan or other frameworks that they have in place. So the intention is to provide the downtown mobility plan a tool and an action, a tool to make decisions and an action agenda to understand to prioritize those decisions. But ultimately, I think anything that needs to be, isn't going to be implemented is going to have to go through, whatever plans are adopted by the city before they get moved to actual implementation.
Right, because the city has the mobility goals that they have. Those were part of the plan that was released yesterday, along with these goals, which are very similar. My concern has always been there's so many groups out there meeting about this, and I wanted to try to avoid conflict that would take place. My biggest emphasis here is about safety and about pedestrian safety and how we get around downtown. So I'm just throwing that out now. You don't have to really address that. Amy, if you want to say anything, go right ahead.
No, I was just going to add that, absolutely safety is our first and foremost priority with everything that we do. And all of our transit riders are pedestrians at the beginning and end of their trips. So that is absolutely first and foremost in our mind through all of these processes. And certainly PDP and DOMI are aligned in that as well.
Okay, it's kind of like the same page thing, being on the same page. Are there any questions of board members, Chris or Amy? Okay, seeing none, I'm not sure if there's any stakeholders that have questions or whether David, do you want me to wait until you're done or see if stakeholders have any questions, if there's any stakeholder questions, or do you want to wait and see if there's any?
I'll tell you what, John, I'd probably prefer to go ahead and do my piece and then we can answer any questions from either board members or stakeholders afterward.
Sure, go ahead, David.
Mine will be very brief. If I could have the next slide, please. So we weren't going to be talking about the BRT project today. We were planning on doing an update in July, but the FTA made an announcement last Friday that I wanted to just provide some context for. It was very good news for us and for the region. So just to provide context, this announcement was related to the American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed into law on March 11th of this year. And as you'll recall, that included more than $30 billion for public transportation support. And the bulk of that money was money that was allocated to transit agencies across the country that were a continuation of the relief funding that we'd already received, but will allow us to absorb the additional costs related to the pandemic, as well as the lost fare revenues. And so we were already very grateful for the support coming from the federal government in terms of our operating support. However, there was a small amount of money, relatively small compared to the big picture, of about $250 million that had been set aside for the capital investment grant program of the FTA, which includes the small starts projects, of which the Downtown-Uptown-Oakland East End BRT project is one of those. And so on Friday, the FTA announced the funding allocations from that $250 million to projects in the Small Starts program, of which Port Authority's project received about $19.3 million of additional support. So just to provide some context, there were about 22 projects across the country that were included in this allocation. About 18 of those are BRT projects, so we're right in line with this. And so the nice thing about this money is that it is supportive of the local match. It's not counting against the federal share for the project, so that's very good news for us as we continue to advance the project. And so just a brief preview of where we are for next month. We continue to work with the FTA and the project management oversight consultant on the review of the project and the project details. The one feedback we've gotten is that this is a complex project, and so we're working with them to help them understand and advance the project. So we'll have a more complete update next month, but I did want to provide some context on this funding announcement last week. And I'd be happy to take any questions on this, or Amy and Chris would still be available on the other presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions of committee members of David?
No.
Any other board members have questions of David? Now, as I said before, any of the stakeholders that are on the call might have questions of either Amy or Chris or David, feel free to weigh in now. What I want to do is stay focused on what we're talking about, though. Okay, I don't see any questions. Thank you again, Chris and
Thank
Amy.
you.
Thanks, Dave.
Forward to hearing more next month about the BRT, David. So that really concludes our work on the committee today. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So the meeting stands in adjournment until our July meeting. Well, thank you very much for everyone for joining us today. And I think next is the Finance Committee. Ann?
Yep, we'll just give everyone a minute to find their papers and agendas. All right. Okay, I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting of June 17th, 2021. Our first agenda item is a roll call. So let's see who's here. Board Member Liptak.
Here.
Representative Davis.
Here.
Board Member DeLon.
Good morning.
And any other board members, please identify yourselves.
John Tagg.
Stephanie Terman.
Jeff Letwin.
Okay, thank you. Our second agenda item is approval of the minutes of the May 20th, 2021 Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve, or first, anyone with any comments or corrections? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. And I'll do the second. Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we have a number of resolutions to consider this morning. The first being the authorization to approve the Title VI analysis for the planned FY 2022 fare structure changes. What do we have? Pete, are you starting?
Yes, good morning. Catherine and I are going to do a little tag team here because there's a number of items. So the first thing we're going to do is a overview of the Title VI requirement, and the Title VI is required under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Before I get started, I did want to publicly thank Laura Wolfgram from 4 Nines and her team. They're very professional and knowledgeable in the area of Title VI, and also have been instrumental in helping us on the proposed fare change. I think Laura hopefully is on this call. So prior to adopting any fare policy change or major service change, the authority is required to conduct a fare equity analysis and analyze any specific elements of the proposed fare structure. So FTA requires us to look at the disparate impact, which is the impact on minority populations, and also disproportionate burden, which is the impact on low-income households via any changes in the fare structure. The policy establishes a 20% threshold to determine whether minority or low-income riders would be adversely affected. So in summary, the detailed full report, which will be available on the FARE website hopefully this morning, that there is the fare equity analysis found that the proposed fare structure does not result in a disparate impact or disproportionate burden. Next slide, please. The analysis evaluated the effects of the fare change on the average fare paid, and from an absolute and percentage change basis between the existing and proposed fares. It looked at the proportion of minority and low-income riders that would be affected by each fare change. The findings were that the fare change primarily impacted those using the Connect card to ride. So there was a decrease in fares for Connect card riders who transfer, and there will be a slight increase for Connect card riders who did not utilize a transfer. Once again, there was no findings of a disparate impact or disproportionate burden. Overall, both minority and low-income riders benefit from the proposed fare change versus the other non-minority and higher income riders. Next slide, please. This is just a little of the analysis, and I won't get into this in great detail, but so minority riders, generally speaking, there'll be a 1.4% decrease in their average fare, whereas non-minority riders about a 0.5% increase in their average fare. From a low-income standpoint, low-income riders will experience a 2.5% decrease in their average fare. Non-low-income riders, a slight increase of 1.5%. Next slide. Now this turns the attention to the fare media access portion of the Title VI analysis. And thanks to the help of A.B. Silberman and the Service Planning Department, they looked at the populations of Port Authority's service walkshed and whether they lived within 1/2 mile of a Connect Card sales outlet terminal or ticket vending machines. The findings, about 1/4% of the population within the service walkshed have access to a Connect Card location near where they live. Riders may have additional access to a Connect Card location at other points along their journey or near their destination. Now, while there were no findings of disparate impact or disproportionate burden in terms of fare access in the Title VI report, which means that it didn't infringe on the 20% threshold. There is significant room for improvement. About 25% of our riders do have access to our sales outlet footprint. And so consequently, the Port Authority has put together a working group to address this. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit of the information that I just alluded to. From a minority standpoint, about 20% of minorities have access to the sales outlet footprint. Non-minorities, about 26%, so about overall, as I said, about 1/4 of our riders have access to the TVM or a sales outlet terminal. From an income standpoint, that percentage is very similar, 23%. Next slide. So we've convened a Fair Choices Working Group, and their purpose is to identify communities most in need of additional Connect Card locations and determine potential outlets within each of these communities, and to secure agreements within these communities to install either TVMs or sales outlet terminals. We identified 7 priority communities as listed there. Just recently have come to agreements in both the Hill District and McKeesport, so that leaves 5 of the 7 remaining identified priority communities that we're still working to expand the sales outlets. Next slide. So this resolution, as I mentioned, FTA regulations and our Port Authority Title VI program requires a report to be completed and approved by the Port Authority's board prior to a fare policy or structure change being implemented. A detailed full report and attachment of the fare changes in Exhibit A to the proposed resolution will not have a disparate impact on minority populations or put disproportionate burden on low-income populations. Accordingly, there are no mitigation strategies that the Port Authority needs to adopt as part of this fare structure change. So the resolution would approve the Title VI analysis report for the Port Authority and the proposed fiscal 22 fare structure changes.
Okay. Thank you. Committee members, do we have any questions about the Title VI analysis? And from other board members?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have one question. Can you
Go
just
ahead.
go back to the previous slide very quickly? So can you talk a little bit about the 7 priority communities and how we're going to try to address some of the needs going forward?
Yes, I know I'm not on that particular fair working group, but I mean, I do know that they're making overtures to both small and large retail or even public spaces to identify places that you could either put in a SOT or a TVM.
Okay, thank you.
And Representative, this is Catherine. We'll talk probably in a few minutes about our broader tactics to make sure it's not just ticket vending machines, but how are we rolling out other technology improvements, you know, with the goal that nobody has to go essentially more than a quarter mile or a 5-minute walk to get to their fare media. But that will be in the next couple of slides.
Just a clarification, Ann. This is just approval of the Title VI analysis, right? It's not approval of the fare structure. It's just a piece of that. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have a comment. Could you go back one more slide or 2 slides at this point? So with the analysis of people's access to a TVM or a sales outlet, it was based on their home residence, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we know the percentages of who can access it within that or walking distance of their home, but you did make the point that there are opportunities for people throughout their traveling. If they come downtown or they go to a different neighborhood, you know.
There could be a TVM or an SOT,
right,
you know, along the trip.
Yeah, we didn't have to analyze that, but there are multiple opportunities as they travel to access these as well.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution and forward it to the board?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, our next resolution is authorization to adopt and implement the fiscal year 2022 fare structure changes.
And I'm going to turn this portion over to Catherine.
Good morning, committee members, members of the board, members of the public. Thank you for joining us this morning. I will be reviewing some of the information coming into our proposed fare structure changes, starting with our public comment summary. A point I would like to stress is when we are talking about all the work coming into a fare structure, a fare policy, et cetera, it's essentially a 4-prong approach. The first part will be the changes to what people actually pay. But then we also have impacts in technology improvements. We have the fare working group and making it easier for folks to access the stored value cards. And then finally, a discussion around what should be Port Authority's long-term stance and program to make sure that folks who fall outside of these other items still have some type of access to a fare card. So let's start with the public comment summary, if I can get the next slide. So the board authorized Port Authority staff to do a 40-day public comment window. We advertised extensively. We had brochures throughout our service area. We also took public comments via website, phone, and mail. We are one of the few agencies of which I am aware that allows people to call up on the phone and leave a comment that way, so we've been expansive. And we had 3 separate public hearings where people could comment. Next slide, please. So this is a very brief summary of the comments related to the fare change themselves. The more robust studies available on our website, and I believe has been transmitted to board members. So both board members, committee members, and also members of the public could log on and see where we had advertised and more detail on the comments. A comment and a point to stress here is per our policies and FTA regulations and policies, we track comments related specifically to the fare change. If somebody is not commenting on the actual proposed fare change, we log that comment as received, but it does not go into this total of things which are germane just for the fare change. So we were soliciting input on the proposals to increase the stored value by eliminating the 25-cent discount, implementing a 3-hour pass in lieu of a one-ride tap, and then moving to rolling passes. Those are the items that we are talking about today for the actual fare structure change. And so you see the comments displayed in front of you. As we would predict, we had an overwhelming number of people saying do not increase the actual fare. This tracks with what we would expect to see anytime we come out with a fare change. Given the data you saw in the previous presentation, that most folks will see up to a 1 cent increase or a 1 to 2 cent decrease. We're still in a position where this is improving access specifically and lowering fare prices for our low income and our minority populations. So though we do have negative comments on this, we will continue to recommend we go forward with this. And another point to stress is our individual ride fare has essentially been unchanged since 2012. We also expected to get more support for the rolling pass, where we heard from folks that they appreciated the potential convenience for them moving forward. And then also broadly that the 3-hour with no transfer would be positive. Again, our research shows over 90% of our patrons are making all of their trips within a 3-hour block. So now folks could have the opportunity to do their morning and evening travel for $5.50 on the days that they are traveling twice. And that is less expensive than doing a round trip today. Next slide, please. Again, we are looking at changes to the fare policy being the broader way of how people interface with Port Authority to do their user fee. I want to stress again that everybody who gets on our bus is a taxpayer in some way, shape, or form. If you are a homeowner, you pay ad valorem. If you're renting, you're paying somebody else's ad valorem. You are paying sales tax. You are supporting a whole bunch of different taxes and fees. So fares are not the only way that our patrons are paying for service, but it's about 20% of our budget comes from this user fee. And how should Port Authority approach that user fee? The first one, again, are the actual changes to what a fare costs. Second, are technology improvements, and I'll defer to Jeffrey Devlin in a minute for a little more information there. The third is improved accessibility. So as we're discussing, how do people get to a ticket vending machine or a sales terminal, or are there ways where we can make it that they don't have to get this access, that they have the ability to add cash to an account which is already existing and they can go back and forth. 84% of our patrons have a smartphone. So for them, can we make it easier to add cash to those accounts once we go live with our mobile ticketing service? For the 16% that don't have access to a smartphone, what do we do to make it, to create a situation where they can take advantage of the improvements that we have now embedded in our stored media, that you have a rolling pass or a 3-hour pass? And finally, we understand that not everybody will be captured in these improvements. So our final point for conversation is, what are our long-term partnerships to make sure that more people have access to that fare media that need that? The board has heard me say several times that we are a transit agency. We are funded for transit, including fare media. We do not have the skill set to evaluate income levels or participation in various programs, but we have excellent community partners that do. For instance, the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania operates 11 to 13 programs which are specifically focused on COVID relief. If we could partner with United Way on these programs, find a way to get more fare media into those programs, then we've got this partnership that can help connect people who need that pass. We also have an excellent working relationship with Travelers Aid. And so how do we continue to leverage these partnerships in our community with the agencies that are much better at measuring need and connecting people to those services? And in many cases, how do we highlight which agencies are already out there providing some level of fare media relief so it's easier for people to get there? So again, the fare change is where this starts, but you will see the fare change is where this starts, but it is part of an overall process to make it easier for folks, more convenient and friendlier to do the user fee. I will ask Jeffrey Devlin to talk briefly about our technology improvements. So these are focused on our mobile ticketing services, and Jeffrey Devlin.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. So as part of our mobile ticketing services, it wasn't just the app. it was really, how do we make sure that folks have better access to these different fare medias? So while the Fair Choices committee works on getting more TVMs and SOTs out there, our partner on the mobile ticketing side, Masabi, has a retail network. It's called Incom, and we're working on how we can utilize that network of a variety of different stores that are in all kinds of different areas so that folks can go into those stores and top up their value if they're unbanked through a regular retail network. And we're very excited about this. I can't disclose at this time because the contract isn't actually signed, but it is one of the key elements to the mobile ticketing services was how do we roll out the cash digitization aspect to really improve that access to fare media. And I'm excited that the mobile ticketing project is including that cash digitization aspect also. Thank you.
So thank you, Jeffrey, and more information to come on that. We have one thing we had struggled with previously was, you know, would a cash payer have to go buy a gift card and pay the activation fee and then use that gift card tied to their account? And what our IT team is looking at for cash digitization, which I probably said incorrectly, removes that. It creates this network where someone can go to a store and, you know, show a barcode or some other identifier, hand over a $20 bill, and that get added to their account. So we're actually really excited about this, and there's a pretty broad retail network there. So again, we're talking to you today, and we'll ask you to authorize a recommendation to the full board for the fare changes, and that's the first step in what we will see as many programs this year to improve people's fare access and ability to pay. So next slide. So today we are asking the board to adopt a fiscal 22 fare structure change. Of course, for us, fiscal 22 starts on July 1st. We are anticipating a January 1st calendar 22 actual implementation date on these changes. Part of that is the amount of time it takes to program ticket vending machines. And it doesn't matter if it's Scheid & Bachman or any other vendor. It's just a lot of going through the manual, moving around the screens, et cetera. We are optimistic that we can get there a little faster, but we are saying by January 1st to bring these benefits. And again, to highlight, we would be eliminating the 25-cent store discount on the individual tap with a Connect card. The $275 then with that tap would be a 3-hour pass, ride as much as somebody wants to, and replacing set monthly and weekly passes with a rolling 31-day or 7-day pass. And we ask for a recommendation to take this item to the full board for approval.
Thank you. Do I have any questions or comments from committee members? Any questions or comments from other board members?
Just a quick question, Catherine. On the public comment period, so it doesn't look like, at least from what I can see, that there were no adjustments made based on public comment. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. When we look at the comment we received, we did have, for instance, one of our public hearings, somebody had asked about the discounting a day pass. Could we price out discounting it, for instance, from $7 down to $6? So we did ask our consultant to go through the math for that. But again, since the majority of our folks are traveling in these 3-hour blocks, the 275 pass would be $550. That would still be less expensive than the day pass. And it's readily available. You just tap your pass and it's right there. Someone didn't have to go out and buy it. We did evaluate that, but based on our research, go ahead, lowering the day pass would not provide as much benefit as just going with a 275 for the 3-hour pass, for instance. So we did receive some suggestions there, and we evaluated them. And then based on what we saw, we were still providing maximum value based on what was proposed.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I was just going to mention maybe a tool for the toolbox as well is PNC, I heard recently, is going to offer a very, very low income banking option where it's like $5 a month, but no overdraft fees or anything. And that might be a way to help people who are unbanked become banked, and maybe that helps them purchase their fare media. I don't know much about it otherwise, but there was an announcement about that. And I thought maybe that was something to, you know, discuss with your partners about promoting that option.
It's excellent. Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to recommend this resolution be considered by the board next week?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next resolution is authorization to appoint a successor trustee for the consolidated pension plan. Pete.
Good morning again. So the consolidated trustees, which represent the IBW and non-rep pension plans, which are both closed plans and considered a single trust, in coordination with the ATU pension plan, voted to put out for RFP custodial or trustee services. So this is the company that actually houses the pension funds for the various investment managers. Guess I could take this off. Sorry. The RFP was issued to qualified institutions. We received 6 responses. Those 6 responses were shortlisted to 3 firms. We brought those 3 firms in for interviews and also did an analysis of their software platforms. US Bank was identified as the highest rated proposer. So this resolution would authorize the consolidated plan to appoint US Bank as the custodian or trustee. And I should mention that the ATU plan concurs with US Bank as the selected trustee. And of note that it should result in annual savings of approximately $500,000 annually, which does impact both pensioners and the authority, since the authority does make contributions to the pension plans. Are there any questions on that?
Any questions from committee members? Any questions from other board members? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to forward this to next week's board meeting?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, our next resolution, authorization to adopt the FY 2022 operating and capital budgets. Pete.
Thank you. So traditionally, unless there were material changes from the May board presentation, we do not go through and do a full-blown presentation. It would be very similar in substance to the May budget presentation. So there were no material changes in the operating budget request. It changed by $117,000. And most of that was, we did add 3 additional ATU positions in the LRT systems and power area, increasing the total new jobs in fiscal 22 from 32 to 35. We did have an increase in purchase services, about $300,000 for planning services and $100,000 for some Bombardier electronic board testing. And we were also able to slightly make some reductions in the salary and wage category based on some recent retirements within the ATU work group, so that next year we will have new hires coming in at a lower rate. So that's why that $117,000 increase. When we would factor in 3 new ATU positions plus $400,000 in purchase services, obviously that's more than $117,000, but we were able to recognize some savings because of recent retirements. The capital budget is unchanged from from the May presentation. So there were no changes in that. So this resolution would request adoption of the fiscal 22 operating and capital budgets as required by law.
Thanks. Okay.
Next slide. I believe there might be a So this just highlights the areas where you would see the May version, and I apologize for the small type, but I believe this was part of the packet. Highlights the areas where there was minimal changes from the May version from an operating standpoint. Next slide. And this is the capital budget and unchanged from what was presented at the May committee and board meetings. Next slide. Okay, so
Okay.
I will turn it over to.
Great. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from other board members? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will turn it over to Ms. Inez Colon.
Thanks. Our next resolution is authorization to adopt collective bargaining agreement with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 29.
Good morning,
Morning.
Madam Chair, board members. The resolution that you have before you is the adoption of the collective bargaining agreement with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 29. The collective bargaining agreement between Port Authority and IBEW covering the terms and conditions of employment for customer service, benefits, and other personnel expired on April 30th, 2021. With the support of the IBEW strategy team, the two leads were able to negotiate in good faith with IBEW, resulting in a tentative agreement on the terms and conditions, which would be effective May 1, 2021 to April 30th, 2023. And you have the details within Exhibit A to your resolution. The proposed agreement, to summarize, includes a wage increase of 2.75%, as well as work rule and minimal cost benefit changes. There were no proposed changes to the healthcare, the closed pension plan, for that matter, the current defined contribution plan. IBEW membership have ratified the proposed agreement. The resolution at this time would ratify the proposed agreement on behalf of Port Authority and authorize the staff and legal counsel to codify the agreement, as well as authorize us to execute the terms of that agreement. Madam Chair, I respectfully request your approval so that we may begin to not only execute it in terms of the terms and conditions with the carriers, but more importantly, to get that codified within our contract.
Sure.
Are there any questions?
Any questions from committee members? Any questions or comments from other board members? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, our final agenda item is a review of the May 2021 financial statements. Pete.
Thank you once again. Next slide, please. So for the month of May, total operating income was $4.9 million below budget. Every income category other than other income was below budget. There was a slight uptick in real estate income for the month of May. Total operating income for the fiscal year is $59.7 million below budget due to the pandemic. On a bright note, total expense for the month of May was $5.3 million under budget. And for the fiscal year, total expense continues to be under budget by a total of $41 million. Every expense category other than salary and wages is below budget. If this trend continues, we would not have to use any deferred revenue, which was an item used to balance the fiscal 2021 budget. From a subsidy perspective, the total subsidy for the month is 4.4 million below budget. But for the fiscal year, total subsidy is $3.3 million above budget. Through May, the authority had a $5.6 million deficit, and we are shortly going to prepare another CARES invoice to eliminate that deficit that's showing through the month of May. From a year-over-year perspective, our total operating income in May was 2.2 million higher than May of 2020, principally due to higher passenger revenue. On a fiscal year basis, our total operating income is 45.8 million lower due to the impact of the pandemic. Total expenses on a year-over-year basis is 8 million higher than fiscal 20 due to higher wages and salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, and other expense. From a subsidy perspective, year over year, we're 65.7 million higher, and that's due to the receipt of the CARES funding, which was not a budgeted item in the prior year. Our operating reserves, we began the month of May at $144.1 million in operating reserves. We had income sources of revenue totaling $32.5 million from passenger revenue and other grant subsidies. Our cash outflows for the month totaled $34 million for salary and wages, benefits, and services. So we ended the month of May with $142.6 million in operating reserves. May I answer any questions regarding the financial statements?
Any questions from committee members or board members on the financial statements? Well, it was nice to see the fair revenue bounce back from last May.
Yeah.
Nice. Hopefully that continues. Okay, I think that's all we have.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That concludes the Finance Committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay, we will see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to be filling in today for Michelle as chair of the Performance and Oversight Committee. She had a conflict. So we'll start with a roll call of board members, of committee members. Representative Ms. Gorski, are you on the line? Okay, I'm here, and Michelle is not on the line. Other board members who are present?
Stephanie Turman.
Ron Tagg.
Jen Liptak.
Great. Quick question, because we don't have committee members, can we do an approval in the minutes, or that could be voted on by all board members?
Jeff's on the line, I believe. He can also participate in any vote of the committee, correct, Jeff?
This is Sandy Garfinkel, acting solicitor to the board. If you can hear me, other board members can act on committee items when there aren't committee members present. So you can proceed with the agenda.
Thanks, Sandy. First order of business is approval of the minutes of the May 20th, 2021 Performance and Oversight Committee. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, proposed resolution awarding of the bids. Tony Trona.
Thank you and good morning. I have 5 items for your review and presentations of the full board for approval. All of our bids were publicly advertised and our electronic documents were distributed. The first is Pantograph carbon collector strips for the LRV. 2 firms accepted our invitation. 2 bids were received for these carbon strips for the LRV over a 2-year period. It's our recommendation that a contract be awarded to the low responsive bidder, which was Shunk Carbon Technology LLC, estimated amount of $195,079.20 over a 2-year period. This price represents a 12% increase from the previous contracted price for these items 2 years ago. The second is LRV HVAC microcontrol cards. 2 firms accepted, 2 bids were received for these control cards over a 1-year period. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded to Transit Air Systems LLC, estimated amount $666,500 over a 1-year period. This price represents a 25% decrease from the previous contracted price for this item 2 years ago. The third, wayside wheel profile and measurement system. 3 firms accepted the invitation, 3 bids were received for this system for the LRV vehicles fleet. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded to IEM Corporation in the amount of $391,412. There's been no previous purchase of this equipment. However, the staff has determined the pricing to be fair and reasonable. Number 4, vehicle air surface purification devices. 8 firms accepted our invitation. 6 bids were received for these devices for the LRV and coach fleets. 4 low bids for the LRV systems did not meet our technical specifications and therefore ineligible for award. 3 low bids for the coach systems did not meet our technical specifications and also ineligible for award. So the recommendation to award the contract to the low responsive bidders are as follows. Norbrake an amount of $809,676 for the LRV system. Aftermarket parts an amount of $1,896,127.65 for the coach system. Now on the LRV side, the low bidder, the difference between award and the low bidder was $414,000. And on the bus side, the low bidder, the difference of award was approximately $1.7 million. Now, the other bids that we got were in the range of $1.8 and $2.7 million. So the low bid that came in that did not meet technical specifications was really off the chart and off the market with their price. So that's why the difference is so expanded on that. Just wanted to make sure that was clear that they were not even in the market price. Number 5, coach replacement parts, air brake dryer cartridges. 7 firms accepted the invitation, 7 bids were received for these air brake cartridges over a 2-year period. So our recommendation that the award go to Mohawk Manufacturing Supply for 3 items, estimated amount of $116,685. Aftermarket parts, 1 item, estimated amount of $65,430. And this price represents an 11% decrease from the previous contracted price for these items 2 years ago. And that concludes my report. Any questions?
Seeing no questions by board members, is there a motion to approve the awarding of the bids?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Um,
Aye. Any noes? Motion carries. Thanks, Tony.
You're welcome.
Next item of business is authorization to amend the Port Authority of Allegheny County's procedures for competitive negotiations for professional and technical services. Mike Setro, are you available?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Acting Committee Chairman and committee members. This first resolution I have for the committee's consideration this morning would authorize Port Authority to amend its procedures for competitive negotiations for professional and technical services. In accordance with FTA regulations, other applicable law and procurement best practices, Port Authority has long maintained these competitive negotiation procedures that outline the public solicitation process that Port Authority utilizes when we're seeking firms to provide Port Authority professional or technical services such as engineering or design services, legal services, insurance, brokerage services, IT services, et cetera, via our request for proposals or request for qualifications processes. The current version of the procedures was last updated in 2003, and our Chief Executive Officer tasked myself, our procurement and finance teams with doing a quality assurance review to identify areas where we can make potential improvements and updates due to the age of the document. And based upon this review, our staff is recommending various changes as set forth in Exhibit A to the resolution, including amending Section 7 of the procedures to add 2 additional Port Authority staff with relevant technical expertise to each evaluation committee. Along with this will also allow us to free up DBE and DB program management and finance personnel resources by having these personnel provide their ratings for those areas via written memorandum to the committee versus the current practice where they sometimes have to sit in multi-day evaluation committee sessions just to weigh in on those key areas. So this is really an efficiency measure and a way for us to add some additional technical expertise to each of our evaluation committees. Additionally, and clearly a lesson learned over the last year plus via the pandemic, the proposed updates to the procedures to clarify that Port Authority can accept proposals in either hard copy or electronic format and can conduct our solicitation process in either one of those formats or in a hybrid format. And finally, again, because the procedures were last updated in 2003, making some ministerial changes to reflect current department names and position titles. Subject to any questions that members may have, I'd respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution that would authorize amending our procedures. And as proposed, this would be effective for any professional and technical services RFPs or RFQs issued on or after July 1st, 2021 to coincide with the start of our new fiscal year to the full board for approval.
Any questions from board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, the authorization to enter into an agreement for property and casualty risk management services. Mike?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Acting Committee Chairman. My second resolution this morning would authorize Port Authority to enter into an agreement with Aon Risk Services Central, Inc. for the provision of property and casualty risk management and brokerage services to Port Authority. The services include, but are not necessarily limited to, the design and marketing of our operational insurance coverages required for Port Authority to conduct business. This includes our directors and officers and executive liability insurance, our property insurance, and other protections such as our cybersecurity insurance and excess workers' compensation insurance that we're required to carry to maintain our self-insured status for workers' compensation purposes. Assisting us in evaluating insurance proposals and placement of insurance coverages on an as-needed basis, which most policies, that's typically 1 year. In some cases, you can lock in for 2 years. And then providing day-to-day advice and support regarding the insurance requirements for our contracts with our vendors or licensees that are entering onto our property. In accordance with Port Authority's current board-adopted procurement procedures for professional and technical service solicitations, Port Authority issued RFP number 2102 in March 2021, seeking a qualified contractor to perform these services. 5 proposals were received and evaluated by a duly formed evaluation committee that included finance, legal communications, and human resources division personnel. Based upon the committee's evaluation, Aon was identified as the highest rated proposer. The details as far as the evaluations of the shortlisted firms are provided in the resolution summary in your packets this morning. But briefly, I would note Aon was identified by the committee as the highest rated proposer due to their clear and comprehensive project management plan and identifying key personnel that have demonstrated experience in transit risk management. Aon proposed a 10% DB utilization via a subcontracting relationship with certified DB firm Leslie Saunders Insurance Agency. And finally, Aon proposed the lowest cost of all 5 of the proposers. This resolution, if ultimately approved by the board, would authorize Port Authority to enter into an agreement with Aon for an initial term of 3 years with 2 optional extension years for a total not to exceed amount of $285,000, which would be broken down in a $95,000 flat annual fee, which is actually a bit less than the current $108,000 we pay annually for these services. Subject to any member questions, I respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Any questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item. No, thanks, Mike. Next item, authorization to enter into an agreement for utility consulting and administrative support services. Peter Shank.
Good morning again. The Port Authority requires a contractor for utility consulting and administrative support services. As you can imagine, we have numerous utility invoices, and it really requires expertise of an outside contractor to monitor those invoices for overbillings, instances where there might be leaks and that sort of thing. So the contractor monitors these utility bills for errors and extraordinary amounts. They also assist with entering the utility invoices into our accounts payable system. They work with our procurement division to monitor energy markets, specifically the electric and natural gas, and look for opportunities to lock in long-term savings on those utility contracts. And they also provide support to our construction management division when there's either new construction or a rehab construction. This request for proposal was publicly advertised. We received 2 proposals. An evaluation committee constituted of members of technical support, human resources, and finance was formed, and Eric Ryan was identified by the committee as the highest rated proposer to perform these services. Excuse me. This resolution would authorize the Port Authority to enter in an agreement with Eric Ryan for a not to exceed amount of $187,200 to be allocated via work order specific for a 3-year period, and with an option to extend the agreement for additional 2 years at the sole discretion of the Port Authority. May I answer any questions?
Seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Final
Thank you
agenda
so
item.
much.
Thanks, Peter. Final agenda item, authorization to enter into agreement for a pool of firms to provide architectural design service. Eric?
Thank you. Good morning. This resolution seeks authorization to award architectural design services. We received 6 proposals on March 10th. We would award a pool of firms for 2 categories shown in the chart there on your screen to Michael Baker, Whitman Reckwart, and CDM Smith. The term would be 4 years with 1 option year, not to exceed $800,000. Work would be issued on work orders on an as-needed basis and would cover architectural design, construction bid and award support, and project management. Next slide. Categories are listed there. Transit passenger facility would cover design for transit-oriented development, station improvements, architectural elements along fixed guideways, improvements to rail, busway, and incline stations, as well as various trade design services such as mechanical, electrical, plumbing, vertical transportation, structural design. The category B, industrial building design, would cover general building renovations or new construction, maintenance equipment, and then also would cover general engineering services and architectural services for structural repairs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire and life safety, and related work. Following any questions, I seek your respectfully request your approval to award this, recommend this to the full board for award.
Seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve?
Well, Austin, that's John, I did have a question. I
Oh,
wanted
go ahead.
on the one of the ADA accessibility, I'm going on the assumption that that they're familiar with the current ADA standards, right?
That is correct. The ADA accessibility guidelines that we list in the scope of services reflects that the most current versions are used in our designs.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Well, that concludes our
Thank you.
committee meeting of Performance and Oversight Committee. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Obviously.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, well, thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Inez.
Okay, hello, this is Jennifer. Now it's on to everyone's favorite committee meeting, the best for last, which is the Technology Committee. I would like to start the meeting with a roll call. So I would ask, is Representative Ms. Gorski, is she on the line? No? Other committee members, will you please identify yourselves? John, you're on the line, correct?
Sorry, yes.
Anyone else?
Stephanie Turman. Yes, Stephanie
And-
Turman.
And Ann, correct?
I don't think so.
Maybe she left. Okay, so we're going to move forward. I also want to make sure it was noted for the record that I was present for the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee meeting that was earlier today. I didn't speak during that meeting, but John, I was in attendance at your meeting as well. Okay, let's go on to the first item of business. I'll accept a motion for the approval of the minutes from the May 20th, 2021 Technology Committee meeting. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Yep. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, now we have proposed resolutions. Mr. Devlin will be, our Chief Information Officer, will be providing those resolutions. So Mr. Devlin, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, committee members and board members and members of the public. Nice to see you this morning. As mentioned earlier this morning with the fare structure changes, we do have some technology changes that need to occur. Primarily, these are with our hardware side of the Shine and Bachman system, the screens for the ticket vending machines and the sales outlet terminals in our retail networks. A little bit of the back office software needs some change, and then our fare boxes and validators and the web portals need some updates to be able to accommodate the fare changes. And as Catherine mentioned, I do want to note that if we had brand X TVMs, we would still be needing to make these changes. So this is not just a Schein Bachman situation. This is really any fare change requires this work. So this resolution we're requesting is an authorization to enter an agreement with Schein Bachman for the FY22 fare structure changes software updates. As noted, it is contingent on the board approving this prior this morning, so we're appreciative of that. It is a sole source agreement, as Schein Bachman is the only firm that can make the changes to their hardware. And includes the software changes, then the implementation. And really, I didn't note it here, but there's a lot of testing that is probably the majority of this aspect, because we don't want to bring the system down and cause any mass chaos out there of folks being able to get their fares while we're implementing this new service. So this authorization I respectfully request is $237,600. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, I respectfully request that this be taken to the full board.
Are there any questions from board members? Jeff, I do have one. Just the parallel testing that will be done, so we'll be able to operate our existing system, and then you guys will go on a parallel, whatever you call it, I don't know the technical term, and run the system over there as well to make sure, and then the transition will happen where one day we flip the switch and it's fine. Is that how it works?
That is spot on correct. That's exactly right. Yes.
Except for the terminology, which was not correct that I used.
No, parallel technology is perfect. It's good.
We'll go beyond that. Okay. If there's no more questions from board members, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next resolution, please.
Yes, thank you. So the next one is Giro Incorporated and our HASTA software. So this was implemented in 2016, and it's has a variety of different modules. They're primarily used in customer services for tracking customer questions, comments, accommodations, and the occasional complaint that comes in. And then primarily within the operations group for the route assignments, for their payroll. It actually includes a web-based cellular app that our operators can use if they so choose, that they can view, select, and track their own work. So I've talked with some operators who appreciate having this capability at their own choice to be able to see when their routes are scheduled up. And a new feature we're adding this year to be used is for our maintenance area, to use it for their annual job pick. So what we need to do is take care of the software and maintenance support services. So this authorization, this resolution is authorization to enter this agreement with Giro. It's a 3-year contract, and again, sole source, it is the Giro software, and they're the only ones capable of supporting it. It includes the software maintenance and support, and we've used considerably over the past years. What we built in are 40 days of customizations and training support that we need through this contract also. So this 3-year contract at $1,422,081. If there are any questions, I will take them. Otherwise, I respectfully request that this be taken to the full board for approval.
I have a question, Jennifer. Is it one of the things I'm interested in? I mean, you said it's is it primarily customer service? In other words, I'm kind of interested in kind of the public's comments, meaning what do we get in the way of accommodations, not accommodations, but for drivers, and also what type of customer service complaints we get. I've not seen anything in a long time on that. I wonder if that's something we could look at as a board.
Yes, I'm going to defer to Jim Ritchie for future, as his customer service area can give you better information. Do you want to address it now, Jim?
Yeah.
I'll back away.
Hey, John, that's something we'd be happy to bring to the board. Maybe we can just bring, something from the reports we generate from this kind of software that gives you a sense of the nature of complaints we get on a regular basis, and the magnitude of those complaints. And you can also see the types of categories and subcategories that we track through the software, which allows us to go back and look at trends and spot issues if we're having something in a particular garage or something like that. So if you'd want, we can bring that to a future meeting.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, any more questions from board members? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the final resolution, Mr. Devlin?
Yes, thank you. Whoop, let's do one more there. So Clever Devices is what we consider our intelligent transportation services or system that is on our entire rail and bus fleet. I want to give a shout out to Scott Vatier and recently retired Mike Bone, as they have put a good 20 years of work into getting Clever Devices implemented in our structures here. As I note here, beginning in 2000, we started using them in the bus fleet, and then we started adding them to the rail back in 2015. Provides our GPS capabilities so customers can track their vehicle and know when it's coming. We have our passenger counters on our bus, our voice enunciation, which is an ADA requirement. We also do our wireless communications through the vehicle. So what we need to do now, while we've in the past year upgraded the hardware on the vehicles, now we need to upgrade the legacy software on the bus fleet. So there's about 726 vehicles that need to be upgraded. So that's what this contract is for, getting the software upgraded so that all bus and rail are on the exact same version of the software. And it will really help us enable future and further capabilities of our detour management, disruption management module that we're currently in process of implementing. And while we were with this work with Clever, we had intentions with the Masabi mobile ticketing services to do some integration between the Clever devices and Masabi. So this is really the perfect time to add that component into this contract with Clever devices so that that integration licensing can occur as we move forward towards implementation of mobile ticketing. So this is a 2-year contract with Clever Devices. It's a sole source, again, as Clever Devices is the only agency able to support their software. It brings all of our software up to the Cleverware version of Clever Devices. They like the word clever at Clever Devices. And it includes that configuration and license that I mentioned for integration with mobile ticketing. So the cost of this contract is $103,318. And subject to any questions, I respectfully request that this be taken to the full board for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin, for that presentation. I'll ask if there's any questions of board members.
Just a quick question, Jennifer. So, Jeff, are you overall satisfied with? I know it's a sole source, so it's difficult, but are you satisfied with the results of Clever Devices?
Actually, very, very satisfied. Yes. Yes, very satisfied. When I talk with colleagues at other agencies that do not have Clever, and I see some of the challenges that they are facing, I am very appreciative of the work that Scott, operations, Mike Bone, et cetera, have put in over the years to get us to this point, and that Clever has been able to support us and add these new features as we've needed to roll them out. Very supportive, or very satisfied. Yes, John.
Yeah, that's why I'm always concerned about sole source contracts, but as long as you're satisfied, I'll be satisfied. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I believe that's the last item for our agenda, or is there one more item, Mr. Devlin?
That is all. I just put this as a closing screen.
Because we're the cool committee and we have nice graphics. Thank you. So with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone from the board members, staff, and to the public for participating in today's committee meetings. And with that, we will adjourn for the day. And thank you very much. And stay safe and well, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Have a good day.